Welcome to the Cheating Secrets channel.
Hank woke up and discovered that his phone showed 10 missed calls and the same number of voicemail messages. He didn't recognize the area code. After several run-ins with Chinese robocall spam, he had set his phone to forward unknown numbers to voicemail. Usually, Beijing Betty didn't leave messages. His daughters were not up yet, so he started listening to the messages. That's when he learned that his wife, Randy, was not in Jacksonville, Florida, visiting her parents and sister for the weekend as she had told him. Instead, she was in the burn unit of a hospital in Boulder, Colorado. Hank paused for a moment. His phone was giving him news alerts. Normally, it was annoying, but it never seemed worth the time to turn off this feature. Something about fire stuck in his head. He realized he had seen a news headline with the words "fire" and "Boulder" when his phone screen lit up that morning. He went to his phone's homepage and saw the news headline, "Devastating wildfire destroys Boulder suburb overnight." Interesting. Hank would be the first to admit that sometimes he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but he could think of only one reason his wife, Randy, in their 8th year of marriage, would lie about where she was spending the weekend. He deliberately slowed his pace. There was no point in hurrying. He made coffee. The girls wouldn't wake up for at least another hour. He took the coffee to his wife's workspace in the dining room and grabbed her laptop. It turned out it was now protected by a password he didn't know, but Randy was forgetful and lazy, so he looked for the password written on some scrap of paper and found it at the bottom of a drawer in a small writing desk. Once he gained access, he discovered that she hadn't even closed her email browsers. She had just shut down her computer, relying on her new password and her confidence that Hank wouldn't invade her privacy. All assumptions that existed in this family until this morning no longer apply, Hank thought. And it was true. Everything had changed. She had been meeting with her ex-boyfriend from college, Josh Turner, at his house in Boulder on weekends when Josh's wife was away. This was the guy who had broken Randy's heart by falling in love with and marrying another woman. It seemed that over the years he had developed some guilt about abandoning Randy. Or was it just lust? There weren't many details in the emails, mostly just confirmations of arrival times. Hank assumed they poured their hearts out to each other over the phone. One interesting fact surfaced. Her parents and sister knew about it and agreed to cover for her affair. This wasn't in the emails, but in the chats, which were also open. They all thought she should have married Josh, whose family had money. Hank was simply stunned, as if he were watching a car crash in slow motion and couldn't look away. He took the time to take a deep breath and calm down a bit. He needed this. Otherwise, he might have punched holes in the drywall of the house. He called the hospital in Boulder. When the operator answered, he instinctively asked if Josh Turner was a patient. When they asked Hank to specify his relationship with Mr. Turner, he said that he was a friend. The operator then said she could not provide any information. This response definitely confirmed that they had a patient named Josh Turner. Then Hank called the number left in his voicemail. It was a direct line to the hospital's admissions department. After he introduced himself, the clerk there told him that Randy had been admitted with third-degree burns over more than 80% of her body, including lung damage from smoke inhalation. The fire had apparently erupted suddenly in a drought-stricken area, spreading quickly due to high winds and cutting off the only escape route. Over 100 homes had been burned and destroyed. "Sorry," said Hank. "This can't be my wife. She's in Jacksonville, Florida. You must have the wrong information." He hung up. Yes, of course, she was in Boulder. He felt it but wasn't going to make it easy for anyone. He looked again at his wife's computer and found Josh's social media page. Randy had indeed added him as a friend. There, he found Josh's wife. She had posted publicly from her family's home in San Diego, asking for prayers because she had just learned her husband had been hospitalized with severe burns in Boulder. It was time to get some answers from the god of vengeance, Hank thought, as he messaged Josh's wife in the chat to introduce himself and share what he had discovered. He left his phone number. A while later, as he finished his coffee, he saw another missed call. He didn't recognize the number, but there was a voicemail from Josh's wife, Tina. Hank called her back. "Mrs. Turner? Are you really named Tina?" he had to ask. "Yes," she said with a sigh. "When I married him, there was always the worry that this would happen with the woman Josh had rejected. I married for love. Now it's just a complete mess. You must be Randy's husband." "Yes." "I knew about her, of course, when Josh and I met. Lately he's been acting strangely, but I didn't understand why. Now it all makes sense. Are you experiencing the same thing?" "Pretty much. I knew about Josh, but Randy was acting so calm that I didn't notice anything." "You're handling this very calmly, Hank. How are you managing that?" "You're speaking calmly, too." "I'm taking pills," Tina said. "Josh is severely burned. They've already put him in a medically induced coma. I lost my composure when I heard that. Now, I'm just in shock, especially knowing the truth about what really happened. What's your wife's situation?" "She's severely burned. That's all I know. I told them it couldn't be her because my wife is in Florida." Tina chuckled. "Oh, the hospital is calling again. Let me answer, and let's keep in touch." She hung up, and Hank saved her number in his contacts to ensure the spam blocker wouldn't send the call to voicemail. A new call came in, this time from Randy's father, Bob. Bob must have seen the news and gotten worried. "Yes? Hank? Yes?" There was a pause. Bob never liked Hank, and Hank reciprocated the feeling. But they always maintained a facade of polite interaction. Now, Bob wasn't bothering with politeness. "Hank, have you heard anything from Randy?" Hank paused. This question must have been hard for Bob to ask, morally speaking. "Why would I hear from her? Isn't she upstairs in her old room, spending time with you, your cantankerous wife, and your other idiot daughter?" Bob realized that Hank knew. He sighed. "Hank, she really does love you. I know we've never gotten along." "Bob," Hank interrupted, his voice growing louder, "that's complete nonsense. And before you continue and irritate me even more, understand this. I've always known you never liked me. You were sure I wasn't good enough for your daughter, but Josh was. Your wife and other daughter also treated me like a sneaky intruder. I tolerated it to keep the peace, but that's over now. And let me make this clear. If you were standing in front of me right now, I would do something to you that you can't even imagine. After that, I'd deal with both of those women just for fun. So, you and your lying damn family, you pathetic damn bastards." Hank hung up. There was really nothing more to say. To save time, he blocked Bob's number as well as his mother-in-law's and sister-in-law's numbers. "Dad, why are you shouting?" his daughter Nicole asked as she entered the kitchen. Her younger sister, Rebecca, followed her. "Daddy said a bad word," Rebecca announced. "Really?" Nicole asked. "Say it again, Daddy. I didn't hear it." Hank had to smile. "What was the bad word, Becky?" She frowned. "I can't remember." "You must have misheard. Now, let's have breakfast. Today is pancake day." 3 pancakes each and some orange juice, then both girls watched cartoons. After all, it was Saturday morning. They liked Bubble Guppies. Hank hoped these cartoons were a gateway to something more substantial, like Pinky and the Brain or Phineas and Ferb. The phone rang again. It was Tina Turner. "The pills aren't working." "What?" "The pills I told you I'm taking to calm down? Well, they aren't working." "Why do you say that, Miss Tina Turner?" "At the hospital, they connected me to the ICU where Josh is. The nurse put me on speakerphone, thinking it might help Josh to hear my voice, even though he's in a coma." "And then what?" "I lost it. I yelled that his girlfriend was also badly burned and would probably die, and that it was his fault. I said that after you and I both get the life insurance payouts, we'd go on a round-the-world cruise and spend all our time having sex with each other until we were numb, just to get even. His heart nearly stopped when he heard me. Even though he's in a coma? Yes, it's hard to tell if my yelling caused it or if it was just a coincidence, but he pulled through. I'm sorry. She paused. Sorry for what? Sorry that his heart nearly stopped, or sorry that he's still alive? All of Hank's instincts leaned towards cruelty, but he controlled himself. Just sorry that it all turned out this way. Me too. After a pause, he asked, Tell me about this cruise we're going on. Sorry, I don't know where that came from. Still, I'm curious. I bet you are. She paused. Are you really interested, Hank? I saw on social media that you have a beautiful face, but I didn't follow you closely online. If I had to spend time getting revenge by having sex with someone, you'd be a pretty good choice. Why do you ask? Do I have a chance? I don't know, she answered slowly. It's just that since I found out he was cheating, I've spent a lot of time wondering what's wrong with me. Knowing that you're interested makes me feel a little better. You don't look so bad yourself, by the way. Hank chuckled. Thanks. It's nice to hear, even if my wife clearly preferred your husband. Maybe the problem isn't us. I'm starting to think that too. Tina Turner paused again. Have you ever wondered why they did it? I suppose it's because they thought they could have sex on the side and get away with it. That sounds so simple. Well, what else could it be? Tina said firmly, Listen, we both have a lot to process, but let's stay in touch. We're the only two people who understand what the other is feeling right now. All right, I need to buy Bermuda shorts on Amazon for the cruise, and swim trunks. She giggled. At least you're making me feel better. Maybe the pills are working after all. Get a cabin with a balcony. She giggled again. Goodbye. They hung up. Hank saw that he had another voicemail. It was the hospital again. He called back and was connected to a nurse in Randy's room. She also put him on speakerphone. It must have been a different nurse from the one caring for Josh, but they all seemed to follow the same set of industry medical protocols. Mr. Henry Becker? Yes. I'm Nurse Young. We're on speakerphone right now. I'm in the burn unit intensive care. Your wife is here. She is severely burned and in a medically induced coma. She's next to me. We hope that the sound of your voice might help, even though she's unconscious. Hank thought that after today, the hospital might need to update their standard procedures for dealing with a patient's family. But he had to ask, why do you think that? I wasn't there when she was brought in. One of my colleagues was. She said that your wife gripped her hand tightly and wouldn't let go until they understood what she was demanding. Call my husband. I'm so sorry. Your wife fought the team with all the strength she had and didn't let them do anything until they assured her they would deliver the message. Okay, too little, too late, thought Hank. What should I say? He asked. Say whatever is in your heart, the nurse said naively. All right, thought Hank. Game on. Listen, you pathetic cheat, you dirty creature, he yelled into the phone at his wife. I hope you die in agony and spend eternity in hell with Josh, who's also going to die. Just so you know, I'm going to use all the life insurance money I get to seduce Josh's wife, and I will never forgive you. The line went dead. The nurse must not have been paying attention at first, but it seemed she snapped out of it. Hank realized that this wasn't the path to achieving any peace of mind. One day, he might feel some guilt for saying all this, but today was not that day. Daddy, what does seduce mean? Asked Becky, holding her teddy bear. My little ones. Oh, it means to deceive someone. She thought about this with a serious expression. When is Mommy coming home? This is what really angered him. the need to explain to his daughters what was happening. He should have thought it through carefully, but he wasn't in the mood. As soon as she can, Becky. Becky went back to the living room. Hank watched as she plopped down in front of the TV. There was no way he was going to take the girls to Colorado to see their mother wrapped in bandages like a mummy. He didn't want them to have those kinds of memories. 30 minutes later, he had booked tickets for a week at Disneyland, a reservation at one of Mickey's hotels, and plane tickets. They were leaving the next morning. Nicole would have to miss some kindergarten, but so be it. Just as he received the tickets, the hospital called back. They said Randy had a heart attack and died despite all efforts to save her. Hank asked when it happened. It was exactly when he had yelled at her. Maybe he would advise Tina to try yelling at Josh again. No, let her handle it herself. In the end, Hank had to send Randy's medical insurance information to the hospital to get them to provide the death certificate. He called the local funeral home and arranged for her cremation. With her burns, Hank thought he might get a discount, but they told him they would still charge the full price. He asked them to mail the ashes to him after they returned from Disneyland. At Disneyland, the girls were sad that their mom wasn't with them, but they cheered up with plenty of sweets from the Bibbidi Bobbidi boutique. Josh held on until Thursday. Tina didn't yell at him anymore, so maybe that helped him hang on. After his death, Tina returned to Colorado and stayed with friends since her house had burned down. She acted like a noble widow for her children, she told Hank. She didn't tell them about Randy. Tina's kids were older than Hank's, and they knew their father had been hurt in the fire, so it was harder to ignore everything. Hank's girls had no idea. For a while, he would continue as he had been. Still, not saying anything bad about their mother was not easy. Shortly after they returned from Florida, a delivery guy came to the door with 2 items requiring signatures. The first was a letter from her relatives. The second was a box containing Randy's ashes. The letter contained a request to provide Randy's remains so they could organize a memorial service and funeral in her hometown in Florida if Hank didn't want to arrange something where he lived. They must have been calling someone, he realized. The letter did not contain any apologies for covering for Randy. This fact made his next decision easier. He hired a teenage girl from the neighborhood to babysit and left the girls, who were telling the babysitter about the Disney trip, complete with showing all their new stuff and photos on the tablet. Then Hank drove to a nearby national park. With the box of Randy's ashes packed in a bag slung over his shoulder, Hank headed to one of the remote areas of the park. It had pit toilets made of cinder blocks instead of bathrooms. He took a photo as he dumped the ashes into the toilet. On the way back to the car, he considered that therapy might be a good idea, but the thing was, he wasn't angry anymore. Well, not angry enough to hit someone. Destroying a reputation was something else entirely. He posted the video on social media of him dumping the ashes in the toilet, along with an explanation. Afterward, he wondered if the National Park Service would issue him a fine for polluting the latrine. If so, he'd gladly pay it. He never contacted her relatives, but he saw in the newspaper that they had a memorial service in Jacksonville without him or his daughters. He told the girls that their mom had an accident while she was away and wouldn't be coming back. They took it as he expected. Fortunately, they had wonderful teachers in kindergarten who helped and supported them. The life insurance payout was nice. Randy had more insurance than Hank had thought. The insurance money made it easier for him to restructure his working life. He decided his daughters needed more fresh air, especially at playgrounds with lots of kids, and pretty young mothers, many of whom were very sympathetic to his tragic story. He left out the part about Randy's infidelity. He wanted sympathy, not pity. The girls started getting invited to lots of play dates, where the moms would invite their cute single friends. Hank began to see a way forward. Hank never met Tina Turner in person, although they chatted on the phone from time to time.
Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next episode of Cheating Secrets. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.